The air in the Echo Grand Ballroom was thick with wealth and perfume. On stage, Chief Adebayo Okoro stood at a stark white podium, his voice as smooth as polished marble. Behind him, a giant screen showed his own smiling face next to the logo for his new venture, the Okoro Foundation. Clean water for Africa. He was a master of this domain. The titan of industry spoke of legacy, of giving back, of a sacred duty to uplift the continent. The audience, a mix of Lagos high society, foreign diplomats, and hungry journalists, was completely captivated. Every word was perfect, each gesture rehearsed. Adebayo paused for dramatic effect, letting his words hang in the hall. "It is not what we build for ourselves," he declared, his voice rising, "but what we create for our children that will define us." Applause thundered through the room. But near the back, by a service exit, a small boy tugged on his mother's hand. "Mama," Kalo whispered, his voice thin, "my stomach is hot. It's happening now." Amina's heart seized. She looked at her son's pale face, at the faint sheen of sweat on his brow. She had hoped they could make it through the event, make their quiet statement just by being present with the other families from Adara, and then depart. "Just a little longer, my love," she pleaded softly, her eyes scanning for the nearest way out. "We will go soon." "No, Mama. Now." The urgency in his tone was a familiar terror. Kalo's gaze was wide, fixed on the powerful man on the dais. He saw the sharp suit, the confident posture. He saw a hero. Before his mother could react, Kalo slipped from her grasp. He moved with a speed she hadn't seen in months, weaving through the forest of expensive suits and silk dresses. He was a small, determined ghost heading straight for the light. People turned, murmuring. A security guard in a black suit took a step forward, but the child was too quick. The boy reached the steps of the stage just as the ovation began to die down. Chief Okoro was basking in the adoration, his smile a perfect, radiant mask. He was about to turn and accept the accolades of his board when he saw the small figure climbing toward him. His smile didn't vanish. It froze. Kalo walked right up to the billionaire. He didn't seem intimidated by the lights or the hundreds of staring eyes. He reached out a small hand and tugged on the sleeve of Adebayo's immaculate white agbada. The room fell silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning. "Sir?" the boy said, his voice small but clear in the sudden quiet. "Can you help me? I need to pee." The tycoon stared down at the child, at the worn collar of his shirt, at the dusty state of his small shoes on the pristine white stage. He saw not a sick youth, but a stain, an intrusion, a grotesque breach of his perfect orchestrated moment. His nostrils flared almost imperceptibly. The warmth in his eyes vanished, replaced by a cold, hard glare. Amina was already moving, pushing her way through the paralyzed crowd, her face a mask of horror. "Kalo! I am so sorry, sir. He didn't mean—" But Adebayo didn't even look at her. He raised a single commanding finger. Two hulking security guards materialized, their faces impassive. They flanked Kalo, their presence overwhelming. "Get this. Disruption. Off my stage," the philanthropist said, his voice low and laced with venom. He turned his back on the child and faced the audience, his smile returning, though it was now brittle, strained. "As I was saying, responsibility is key." One of the guards took the boy by the arm. Kalo winced. His mother cried out, "Don't touch him like that. He's sick." She reached the stage trying to get to her son, but the second guard blocked her path, a solid wall of black cloth and muscle. They were herded off the platform and toward a side exit, a bubble of whispers and pointed fingers following them. The flashes from journalist cameras were like lightning strikes, capturing every second of the humiliation. Across the city, in a minimalist penthouse office overlooking the Lekki Ikoyi link bridge, Femi Adewale leaned back in his leather chair. He never attended Adebayo's events. He preferred to watch them on a live stream spread across 3 massive monitors. He observed the whole disaster unfold in high definition. He saw the small boy. He saw the billionaire's mask of rage. But most importantly, he saw the woman. Femi paused the feed, zooming in on her face. Her features were sharper now, worn down by a life he could only guess at. But he recognized her instantly. The fiery activist from Adara, the one who had given the chief so much trouble 2 decades ago. Amina. A slow, calculating smile spread across his face. He picked up his phone. "Get me everything you can on a woman named Amina from Adara village," he instructed his assistant, "and find out everything about her son. His age, his medical history, Everything. He ended the call and stared at the frozen image on the screen, the industrialist turning his back on the child. Femi had spent 15 years looking for a crack in the fortress of Adebayo Okoro. He had probed for financial weaknesses, political missteps, personal scandals. Nothing. The man was a ghost, his past scrubbed clean. But this was not a fissure. This was a seismic event. Back in the ballroom, the magnate finished his speech on autopilot. He shook hands, accepted congratulations, but his mind was a storm. As soon as he could, he retreated to his private suite upstairs. "What was that?" he roared, ripping off his agbada and throwing it on the floor. His PR team flinched. "Chief, we are handling it," his head of PR, a woman named Zara, said, her hands trembling slightly as she looked at her tablet. "It's trending, but we can frame it." A disturbed woman, a security lapse. "I don't want it framed. I want it buried." Adebayo slammed his fist on the mahogany table. Who was she? Why was she there? Who let her son get within a mile of me? He paced the room like a caged leopard. This wasn't random. This was an attack. You find out who sent her. You find out who she works for. I want them ruined. He stopped, his back to them, and stared out the window at the sprawling lights of Lagos, a city he felt he owned. "My legacy," he whispered, a dangerous calm entering his voice. "Everything I have built will not be torn down by a beggar and her child." Meanwhile, in a rattling Danfo bus heading home, Amina held a sleeping Kalo in her arms. She stared out at the blurry streets, her face wet with silent tears. It was over. Her one chance to bring the family's plight to the public eye, and she had failed. She had exposed her son to that man's cruelty for nothing. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She ignored it. The device vibrated again. And again. Annoyed, she finally answered, ready to snap at a wrong number. "Hello? Is this Amina?" a man's voice asked. It was smooth, calm, and unnervingly familiar. "Who is this?" she replied. "My name is Femi Adewale," the voice said. "I believe we have a mutual acquaintance and a common problem." Amina froze. She knew that name. The tech billionaire, Adebayo's great rival. "I have no idea what you're talking about," she answered, her voice shaking. "I think you do," Femi continued, his tone patient. "I have something for you. Information about the Idara River, about what really happened there 20 years ago, and about why your son is sick." The meeting was not set in a boardroom or a fancy restaurant. Femi Adewale came to her. He arrived the next evening at Amina's small fourth-floor apartment in a block of flats that had seen better days. He wore no suit, just a simple black t-shirt that probably cost more than her rent for a year. He brought no bodyguards. She opened the door just a crack, the safety chain still on. "I told you I have nothing to say." "I know," Femi replied, his smile disarming. "That's why I'm here to listen. And to show you something." He held up a plain brown envelope. Amina hesitated. Kalo was asleep in the other room, the sound of his soft, shallow breathing a constant rhythm in her life. This man was dangerous, an interloper from a world she despised. But his words from the phone call echoed in her mind. "About why your son is sick." She slid the chain off. The apartment was sparse but spotless. A worn sofa, a small table where her child did his homework, and shelves filled with books, not decorations. Femi's eyes took it all in, but his expression revealed nothing. "He's sleeping," she said, a clear warning. She did not offer him a seat. "Good. This is for you." He placed the envelope on the table. Amina stared at it, her arms crossed over her chest. "What do you want, Femi? Your war with Adebayo is not my war." "Isn't it?" The tech magnate walked over to her window, looking down at the bustling street below. "My family had a cocoa farm near Idara for 5 generations. Then Okoro minerals arrived, and within a year the soil was dead. The trees withered. My father lost everything." He turned back to face her. "Adebayo's first million was built on my family's ruin. So yes, my fight is personal, but I think it's yours too." Her mind flashed back 2 decades. She remembered a different Adebayo. Young, hungry, his eyes burning with ambition. He had arrived in Idara not as a chief, but as a project manager with big promises. She was the one leading the protests, the fierce young activists shouting about land rights and environmental impact. She remembered their arguments, charged with an energy that soon turned into something else. Secret meetings by the riverbank after dark. Passionate debates that ended in breathless embraces. He had been charming, persuasive. He swore he would set up the mine responsibly, that it would bring prosperity to her village. She had, for a brief, foolish time, believed him. Then the money came in, and he was gone, vanished from her life as quickly as he had entered it, leaving only a string of broken promises and a secret she would carry alone. He left, Amina uttered, her voice flat. That's all. He did more than leave, Femi said, his voice dropping. He poisoned you. Her head snapped up. What are you talking about? Open the envelope, he urged. Her hand shook as she picked it up. She tore it open and pulled out a single photocopied document. It was an internal memo from Okoro Minerals, dated 20 years ago. The subject line read, Waste Disposal Protocol, Idara Site. She scanned the text, her blood running cold. Words jumped out at her. Chemical byproducts, unacceptable disposal cost, suboptimal containment, riverine dilution. It was a cold corporate-speak confession. It detailed a deliberate cost-saving measure to discharge untreated chemical slurry into the Idara River under the cover of night during the peak of the rainy season. Amina sank onto the sofa, the paper trembling in her hand. The pieces of a puzzle she never knew she was holding slammed into place. The years after he departed, the strange sicknesses in the village, the crops that failed for no reason, and then the children. The first was the son of a fisherman, born with a weak heart, then another with breathing problems, then more. A cluster of rare kidney ailments that the doctors in the regional hospital couldn't explain. Her son, Kylo, conceived by that river, born 9 months after those memos were written. She felt a wave of nausea so powerful she had to grip the edge of the sofa. It wasn't bad luck. It wasn't a genetic curse. It was him. It was a line item on a balance sheet. The cost of her son's life measured against the price of proper waste disposal. How did you get this? She whispered, her voice barely audible. I have my sources, Femi replied gently. A disgruntled geologist who could no longer live with the guilt. It took years to find him. Why show me this now? Because of what happened at that gala, he said, his tone sharpening. Adebayo doesn't just have enemies anymore. He has a vulnerability, a perfect tragic story, a sick son he refuses to acknowledge, a son he unknowingly poisoned. Amina looked up, her eyes blazing with a new, terrifying fire. It wasn't just grief anymore. It was rage. Pure, incandescent rage. You want to use him, she accused. You want to use my son as a weapon. I want to give you a cannon, Femi corrected her. That memo is nothing without a human face. Without you and your child, it's just a piece of paper. With you, it's a story that can tear down an empire. And put you on the throne instead? She shot back. I don't care about the throne, her visitor lied smoothly. I care about justice. For my family. For yours. The door to the bedroom creaked open. Kylo stood there, rubbing his eyes, his favorite Captain Nija comic clutched in his hand. Mama? I heard shouting. His mother was on her feet in an instant, her body shielding him from Femi. It's nothing, my love. Just a visitor. Go back to bed. Kylo's gaze fell on the guest, his eyes wide with a child's unfiltered curiosity. Are you a hero or a villain? He asked. Femi was momentarily taken aback. He then crouched down to the boy's level, a warm smile on his face. I'm just a friend of your mother's, he replied. And I'm trying to help her fight a very big monster. The boy's eyes lit up. Like the Serpent of Idara? He inquired, holding up his comic book. Femi glanced at the cover. A costumed hero battling a giant snake rising from a river. The irony was so thick he could taste it. Exactly like that, he confirmed. Amina guided Kylo back to his room and tucked him in. When she returned, her expression was hard as stone. Get out. Femi nodded, not pushing. He had planted the seed. He walked to the door. He has a right to know, Amina. And so does the world. Adebayo built his legacy on the graves of children. It's time to show everyone the foundations. He left. Amina stood alone in the silence of her apartment, the memo lying on the table like a curse. She knew Femi was a snake, offering her a poisoned apple. But she also knew he was right. The rage inside her was a living thing demanding an outlet. She picked up the phone and dialed the number for the head of the Idara Families Association, a group she had formed to share information and support. "BC, it's Amina," she said, her voice steady now, infused with a purpose that terrified her. "Call the other parents. We need to meet. I have something something that changes everything. The war began not with a bang, but with a blog post. It appeared on a popular Lagos gossip site, Naija Gist Now, known for its sharp tone and ruthless takedowns. The headline was brutal. Extortionist mom uses sick son to target beloved philanthropist. The article was a masterpiece of character assassination. It painted Amina as a spurned, obsessed lover from Adebayo's past, a woman who had fabricated a story to cash in on his success. Anonymous friends were quoted. They claimed she was unstable. They said she had a history of making wild accusations. The post was accompanied by a grainy, unflattering photo of her, taken without her knowledge, looking tired and angry. Amina saw it when a cousin sent her the link. She stared at her phone, her knuckles white. Every word was a lie, twisted and sharpened into a weapon. The comment section was even worse. A torrent of vitriol from strangers calling her a gold digger, a monster, a disgrace. Femi's strategy was simple. They had filed a formal legal complaint against Okoro Holdings on behalf of the 12 Idara families, citing the leaked memo as evidence. It was meant to be the first shot, but Adebayo's counterattack was faster, dirtier, and aimed directly at her. The smear campaign escalated. More blogs picked up the story. Paid influencers on social media started sharing it with hashtags like Santak Protect Okoro and Stop the Lies. Her face was everywhere. She started getting threatening calls, unknown numbers breathing heavily into the phone before hanging up. When she took Kalo for his weekly checkup, she saw people pointing and whispering. Amina felt the walls closing in. She stopped answering her phone. She kept the curtains drawn. The other Idara families, mostly simple farmers and fishermen, were terrified. Some wanted to back out. The pressure was immense. "This is how he fights," Femi told her during a hushed meeting in his car. "He doesn't fight the case. He destroys the plaintiff. He's making you radioactive." "So what do we do?" Her voice was strained. "He's turning the whole world against me." "We hold the line," her new ally said, his eyes fixed on the traffic. "He's throwing everything at you because he's scared. That memo is a kill shot and he knows it. He just needs to discredit you before anyone takes it seriously." But the next blow was worse. Somehow Adebayo's team got a hold of Kalo's medical records. The specifics of his kidney disease, his treatment plan, his prognosis, all of it was leaked to a prominent journalist known for being on the mogul's payroll. The resulting article was framed as a tragedy, but the implication was poisonous. It detailed the high cost of Kalo's care, subtly linking it to Amina's desperate need for money. They were using her son's suffering as proof of her greed. It was a move of such profound cruelty that it left her breathless. That was the night she almost broke. Her boy was quiet, sensing her distress. He sat on the floor, arranging his Captain Naija figures in a defensive circle. "Are the villains winning, Mama?" he asked, not looking at her. She knelt beside him, forcing a smile that felt like broken glass. "No, my love. The villains are just loud. The heroes are planning." The lie tasted like ash in her mouth. The next day, a sleek black car with tinted windows parked outside her apartment building. A man in a sharp Western-style suit knocked on her door. He introduced himself as Adebayo's personal lawyer. He was polite, his voice calm and reasonable. He didn't threaten. He sympathized. He said Chief Okoro was a compassionate man who had been deeply misled by his staff about the situation. He said the chief wanted to make things right. Then he made the offer. "A private jet," the lawyer said, his gaze steady. "Tonight, to the best pediatric nephrology clinic in Germany, Professor Klaus Richter. He's the world leader in pediatric transplants. We've already secured a priority donor kidney for Kalo." Amina felt the air leave her lungs. A guaranteed transplant. An end to the weekly dialysis, the constant exhaustion, the fear that clung to every moment. The lawyer wasn't finished. "The chief has also authorized a settlement, 500 million naira, transferred to a private account of your choosing. It will be more than enough to ensure Kalo has the best care for the rest of his life." She just stared at him, unable to form words. It was an escape. A golden key to a door she never thought would open. Life for her son. A real healthy life. "What's the catch?" she finally managed to whisper. The man slid a thick document across the table. "A non-disclosure agreement. You sign this. You attest that your claims against Okoro Holdings were based on a misunderstanding. You board the plane tonight with your son. And you never come back. You never speak of this or of Chief Okoro to anyone ever again. Her mind reeled. The choice was a physical weight pressing down on her chest. Her son's life guaranteed placed on one side of a scale. On the other side, 11 other sick children in Idara. 11 other families who were counting on her. Bisi's daughter, Samuel's son. She thought of their faces at the last meeting, full of fear but also a flicker of hope. Her hope. The emissary saw her hesitation. "This is a one-time offer, Amina," he said, his voice hardening slightly. "It is an act of grace. Do not mistake it for weakness. If you refuse, the chief will be forced to defend himself with the full extent of his resources, and I assure you those resources are limitless." It was a lifeline wrapped in a threat. Amina stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the street where children were playing, running freely. A life she desperately wanted for Kalo. She could give it to him, right now. All she had to do was abandon everyone else. All she had to do was let Adebayo win. She turned back to the lawyer. The exhaustion in her bones was a powerful argument, whispering for her to take the deal, to save her child and let the world burn. For a long moment, she let the temptation wash over her. The thought of relief was so sweet it was painful. No more fighting. No more fear. Just safety. Her gaze fell on Kalo's comic book left on the arm of the sofa. Captain Nija issue number 12, The Serpent of Idara. In the story, the hero had to choose between saving one captured politician or stopping the serpent from poisoning the entire city's water supply. He chose the city. She took a deep breath, the air filling her with a sudden sharp clarity. "Tell your chief," she said, her voice low but hard as diamond, "that my son's life is not for sale, and neither is my silence." The lawyer's polite mask dropped. His eyes turned cold. He slowly stood up, gathering the document. "You have made a grave mistake," he uttered. He didn't need to raise his voice. "You have no idea what's coming for you now." He left. Amina stood in the silence, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had just declared war on a king. She felt a surge of terror so profound it almost buckled her knees. But as the terror subsided, something else took its place. A cold, unbending resolve. She had been tested. She had been offered the world in exchange for her soul, and she had said no. They had tried to break her. They had failed. She picked up her phone, not to call Femi, but to call Bisi from the Idara Families Association. "Bisi," she said, her voice clear and strong. "They tried to buy me out." She paused, letting the reality sink in. "They're scared. It's time we stopped hiding. It's time we showed them who we really are." The Okoro Holdings annual general meeting was Adebayo's cathedral. It was held in the company's own skyscraper, a monument of glass and steel that pierced the Lagos skyline. Inside, the auditorium was filled with the powerful and the privileged. Investors, board members, and a carefully curated selection of financial journalists. The mood was triumphant. On stage, the chief was in his element. He spoke of record profits, of bold new acquisitions, of a future brighter than ever. He was relaxed, commanding, the picture of a man in total control. The recent unpleasantness with the village woman was a minor footnote, expertly handled by his team. Today was about power. Femi's plan had been audacious. He had secured a single press pass for Amina from a sympathetic editor he had on his payroll. The idea was for her to stand up during the Q&A session, a lone figure of defiance, and ask a question that would allow her ally to remotely hijack the main screen and display the damning memo. It was a good plan. It fell apart instantly. As Amina approached the registration desk, a stern-faced woman scanned her pass. A red light flashed on the woman's screen. She looked up, her expression hardening. "I'm sorry, ma'am. This pass has been flagged and revoked." Amina's blood went cold. There must be a mistake. There is no mistake. The employee signaled, and two of Adebayo's private security guards moved to flank her. They were polite but immovable. "Please leave the premises." Panic flared in her chest. She looked around desperately. The other parents from Idara were waiting outside as planned, ready to lend their silent support once she gave the signal. But she couldn't even get in the door. The CEO had anticipated them. He had sealed every entrance. They were escorting her toward the exit when she saw her. A young woman in a drab gray catering uniform pushing a trolley of used glasses. Amina recognized her instantly. It was Yamisi, a girl from a neighboring village to Idara. Her younger brother had died 5 years ago from a sudden kidney failure. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. In Yemisi's gaze, Amina saw a flicker of recognition and something else. A shared, bitter history. Amina acted on pure instinct. Stumbling as if she felt faint, she leaned against the wall, forcing the guards to pause. "Water," she rasped, her hand on her throat. "Please, just a glass of water." One guard remained with her while the other went to the refreshment table. It was the only opening she would get. She locked eyes with the caterer again. She said nothing in English. Instead, she spoke in their shared dialect, her words fast and desperate. "Yemisi, daughter of Bola. It is I, Amina. They are silencing us. The man inside is the one responsible for your brother, for all our children. I need to get in." Yemisi's face went pale. Her hands tightened on the trolley. She looked at the guard, then back at Amina. For a terrible moment, Amina thought she would refuse, that the fear was too great. Then the young woman gave a short, almost imperceptible nod. "Service corridor," she whispered in the same dialect. "West side. Go now." Amina didn't wait. She straightened up, pushed past the bewildered guard, and moved, not toward the exit, but deeper into the building, melting into the crowd of milling guests. She found the west corridor, an unmarked door propped open by a rubber wedge. She slipped inside. The passage smelled of bleach and boiled food. It was another world from the perfumed opulence of the main hall. She followed the muffled sounds of Adebayo's voice until she found a service door leading directly into the auditorium. She cracked it open and peered inside. The chairman was wrapping up his speech. "And so, as we look to the future, we do so from a position of unshakable strength and integrity." The Q&A was about to begin. This was her only chance. It wouldn't be the clean surgical strike Femi had planned. It would be messy. It would be chaotic. It would be real. She took a deep breath, shoved the door open, and stepped out into the light. She didn't walk to the microphone. She just started shouting, Chief Okoro!" Heads whipped around. A wave of confusion rippled through the audience. Adebayo froze at the podium, his face a mask of disbelief. "Who dared? You speak of integrity." Amina's voice was raw, shaking, but powerful. "Let's talk about the integrity of the Adara River. Let's talk about the poison you pumped into our water." Security guards started moving toward her, their faces grim, but she had created the disruption she needed. Outside, hearing the commotion, the other Adara parents surged forward. They overwhelmed the front door security, not with violence, but with the sheer weight of their grief. A dozen men and women, their faces etched with loss, streamed into the auditorium. They didn't shout. They just stood in the aisles, holding up worn, laminated photographs of their sick and dying children. The room erupted. The journalists, smelling blood, were on their feet, cameras flashing. The investors were shouting in confusion. On stage, Adebayo's composure finally cracked. "Remove them!" he screamed into the microphone, his voice shrill. "Get them out." Femi, watching on his live feed, saw his initial plan was dead. He adapted. He couldn't control the main screen anymore, but he still had the contact for the tech journalist he'd bribed. He sent a single text message, "Now. Send it to everyone." All over the room, phones began to buzz. A mass email had just gone out to every journalist on the press list. The subject, the Okoro Minerals Memo. Attached was a high-resolution scan of the document. Amina saw the security guards closing in. She had seconds left. She pointed a trembling finger at the chief. "You poisoned our children for profit. My son is sick because of you. Your son." The accusation hung in the air, a grenade with the pin pulled. Adebayo stared at her, his mind struggling to process the words. "My son?" The woman was insane. Then his eyes fell on one of the photographs. It was held by an old man, tears streaming down his face. The photo was of Kalo, the boy from the gala, the boy who had looked at him with those strangely familiar eyes. Amina's face, the village of Idara, the timeline. It was impossible. It was a lie. It was a nightmare. But as he stared at the image of the sick child, a flicker of a memory from 20 years ago surfaced. A passionate night by the river, her face in the moonlight. The sudden gut-wrenching realization hit him not as a thought, but as a physical blow. The foundation of his entire life, the concrete beneath his feet, turned to dust. The live-streamed stock ticker on the screen behind him, which had been a steady, reassuring green all morning, suddenly flashed red. Okoro Holdings, 5%, then 8%, then 12%. The market was reacting in real time to the dozens of live-tweeting journalists in the room. The chaos swirled around him, but Adebayo didn't see it. He saw only the photo of the boy, the son he never knew he had, the son whose illness was the direct result of a memo he himself had signed 2 decades ago to save a trivial amount of money. The empire he had built to escape his father's shame was not just a monument to his success, it was a tombstone for his own child. 6 months later, the world was a different place. The name Adebayo Okoro was no longer a synonym for power, but for corporate poison. The fallout from the shareholders' meeting had been swift and brutal. Federal investigators had raided Okoro Holdings, seizing servers and files. The board, in a desperate act of self-preservation, had forced his resignation. His assets were frozen, tangled in a web of lawsuits that promised to last for years. The media frenzy had been merciless. It had devoured Adebayo, but it had also taken a bite out of Femi Adewale. An investigative report revealed his role in orchestrating the takedown, his long-held grudge, and his use of Amina and her son as weapons. His carefully crafted image as an ethical disruptor was tarnished. He did not get the clean victory he craved. There was no multi-billion-dollar trust fund. Not yet. The legal battle for the Adara community had just begun. A slow, grinding war of attrition against a corporation fighting for its life. Amina had won the moral victory, but she now faced a mountain of paperwork and court dates. The fight was far from over. But one victory was absolute. A few months ago, an anonymous donation of $1 million had appeared in the account of the Adara Families Association. It was specifically earmarked for Kalo's immediate medical care. No one knew for sure where it came from, but Amina suspected a board member, fleeing a sinking ship with a pang of conscience. And so Kalo got his new kidney. The final scene unfolded not in a courtroom or a boardroom, but on the sun-bleached pavement outside a private Lagos hospital. Adebayo waited there. He was a ghost of his former self. The impeccable agbadas were gone, replaced by a simple, ill-fitting kaftan. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. The unshakable stiffness in his posture had been replaced by a weary slump. He looked like what he was, a broken man. He saw them emerge from the hospital's glass doors. Amina walked with her arm around her son's shoulders. Kalo was still thin, but the sickly pallor was gone from his skin. He walked with a new energy, a lightness in his step. He was wearing a t-shirt with Captain Nija on the front, looking up at his mother and smiling. Adebayo's breath caught in his throat. He took a hesitant step forward, then another. He had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in his head, but now his mind was a blank slate. "Amina," he said. His voice was a dry rasp, unfamiliar even to himself. She stopped. Her body went rigid, her arm tightening protectively around Kalo. She looked at him, and her expression was not one of hatred or triumph or even pity. It was one of utter indifference, the look one gives a stranger who has bumped into you on the street. "Adebayo," she acknowledged, her voice flat. He fumbled for words, his hands twitching at his sides. "The boy, Kalo, I wanted to see." He looked down at his son. His son. He had a son. The reality of it was still a fresh, gaping wound. He wanted to say he was sorry. He wanted to explain. He wanted to beg for a forgiveness he knew he could never receive. But the words were locked in his throat, choked by decades of pride and shame. Kalo looked up at the strange, sad man. He tilted his head, his expression one of pure, childish confusion. He remembered the angry man on the stage, the one who looked like a villain. This man just looked tired. "Mama, who is he?" Kalo asked, his voice clear in the quiet parking lot. The question struck Adebayo harder than any accusation. The boy didn't know him. There was no recognition, no flicker of connection. He was nothing, a stranger. Amina looked from Adebayo's shattered face to her son's questioning one. For a fleeting second, the past and future collided within her. The passionate boy by the river, the ruthless titan on the stage, the broken man before her. All of them were the same person. All of them were irrelevant. She squeezed Kalo's shoulder gently. "Nobody, my love," she said softly. "He's nobody." She did not give Adebayo another glance. She turned and guided her son toward their waiting taxi, her back straight, her steps sure. She was not walking away in triumph. She was walking toward the next phase of a long, heavy fight. But she was walking forward, and she was not alone. Adebayo stood frozen on the pavement, watching them go. He watched the taxi pull away, taking the only piece of his legacy that ever truly mattered with it. The noise of the Lagos traffic, the shouts of the street vendors, the relentless heat of the sun, it all faded away. He was left completely and utterly alone. standing in the ruins of a life built not of stone and steel, but of a single unforgivable sin. The silence that surrounded him was the price of his empire,